The first Purge is here to confuse everyone when you're talking about the Purge movies in the future and you say you like the first Purge and someone asks you, what do you mean, the 2013 one? And you're like, no, the prequel, the movie called The First Purge. And they're like, oh. So this prequel tells us how the Purge came about, how the law was passed, how it started originally on Staten Island in just one place. It was viewed as an experiment and later became a nationwide thing. One night out of the year for 12 hours, there are no laws. You can get away with anything you want, including murder, and people have to survive, just like all the other films. And I was actually interested in this film. The concept of how something like this began was intriguing to me, and I could see that it could perhaps provide a more interesting experience, especially with the social and political commentary that this series has tried and reached for. And so I was actually interested to see how they would approach this subject matter, because one of the issues I've always had with the Purge franchise is that I just don't really buy into it. And so I wanted to see how they would approach it. And I was kind of surprised to see that basically it follows the exact same formula, beat for beat, as all the other Purge movies. It's just that right as this one starts, you see newsreel footage that tells us that there's arguing going on and debates and rallies and people are protesting about this experiment, and it's already in motion. You don't actually see the progression of events that lead to it. It just begins with, hey, it's going to happen really soon, just like all the other Purge films. You meet your heroes, the people you're supposed to care about, and then the Purge starts. And really the only major difference with the Purge sequences is that less people are killed because people are still kind of uncomfortable with it. So there's less carnage and less death. And so I feel like fans of this franchise aren't going to be happy with that, because this franchise tries to be very political and it tries to have a social message, but in the long run, the people who go to see this movie are people who want to see a bunch of carnage and death and a horror action movie. That's all they want, and that's the only reason these movies make their budget back, because they're very cheaply made, and people enjoy going to the theater and watching some carnage for an hour and a half. This film tries and reaches and reaches and reaches to have a message, and it's so heavy-handed and so incredibly obvious that I didn't buy into it for a minute. One of the biggest problems I have with this franchise, as I've already alluded to, is that it's trying to have a message, it's trying to have a moral that means something, that makes us think, but it's sort of like the fast food version of that. It's all surface level, it's all aesthetic, there's nothing under the surface. And when it comes to the protagonists in this film, we follow a hardcore drug dealer who owns corners all around Staten Island where he places people who distribute his drugs. And this is our main character. We're supposed to care about this person who is sending drugs throughout the population of Staten Island, New York. For some reason, this is the guy we're supposed to follow. What I'll say is the lead actor is actually really good, and I would love to see him in other films. I think he has a great future. He could totally be a star. But this character, as he's written on the page, I didn't want to root for him. I didn't care about him. Despite the film's attempt to have a message, it just never really impacted me, because it was very obvious that it's just, yet again, another Purge movie with a bunch of action and horror scenes that are supposed to be scary, but they're really honestly laughable. The first act actually had an okay setup. Marisa Tomei plays the orchestrator of this event. I was curious to see if they would go deeper, but they don't. The setup was initially intriguing, but as soon as the event starts, it's just another Purge movie. We have old ladies with a cart filled with explosive teddy bears. When a woman is getting assaulted by these guys on the Purge night, the scene actually was getting kind of intense, and then they had to throw a line in there that was just so on the nose and so obvious to what it was referencing that it just kind of ruined the entire scene. When our lead hero is with these two women in a room, it fades to black very awkwardly and then just booms back onto the screen, and I honestly thought the power went out for a second. And I want to talk about the technical aspects here, because there's some stuff I noticed right off the bat. The sound effects are probably the cheapest, most used stock sound effects you could possibly hear. I recognized many of them from 1990s video games. That's how old some of them are. The CGI blood in particular is atrocious. There's a scene in the fog. It looked like a YouTube skit. It looked like something I could achieve by just downloading some effects from YouTube, using Final Cut Pro, and just sort of like masking out the background. It was so obviously CGI and cheap. There's a choice with a character that's very important to this film also, to play a scene with that character entirely through security camera footage, and it just plays like they couldn't afford this actor for another day, so they just used the security cam footage. And so you almost feel like you're missing information. Characters make such idiotic choices, too. Our lead hero is underneath the SUV, hiding from some bullets that are being fired from drones overhead. He sees a lot of his friends get killed, and then within 2 seconds after the last round is fired, he just emerges from underneath the van looking around. I'm like, dude, you didn't wait even for a second? You're about to get killed, dude. Like, look around at least. Check your six. Check your front. Check your sides. Whatever. He doesn't. Because the script doesn't ask him to do that. The first Purge is a poor excuse to make more money off of a franchise that doesn't cost much to make because they know they're going to make it back within the opening weekend alone. One of the most important aspects of a film like this is the promise of your premise. Really, that's one of the most important things about any film, is that the audience goes in with expectations, and you have to at least address those expectations or try to harness them in some way or show them those expectations in a different way. My expectations going in was that we were going to get a more mature exploration of how this even began, and it's just another Purge movie. I'm going to give the first Purge a D+. This is the first one in the franchise that technically even just did not feel like it was up to par with the rest. The effects, the editing, the sound effects choices. This could have been a lot better. Even if it was just a throwaway horror movie, it could have been better. Nevertheless, guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmannized.